recorded, and a link to the archive version will be sent to you via email. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. I won't say a very thorough bio of Chris because he's going to go through a lot of his own personal history and experience, but I would like to thank Chris for being here with us today. And again, Chris is the Director of Strategic Growth at the Headstrong Project. We've called upon Chris to take a leadership role in the mentoring aspect of our Mini-MBA in business management for military and veterans. Chris has been a key member of the Rutgers Business School executive education team that developed a fantastic curriculum for military short-timers, veterans, and civilians who work with these populations. This mini-MBA was designed to enhance business acumen and ultimately align military skill sets to business uses. Chris, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Good afternoon, everybody. This is my lessons learned transition to a civilian life. As Margaret said, I'm the Director of Strategic Growth for the Headstrong Project, and there were some key items that I learned throughout my transition that I wanted to share with all of you. So give you a quick little background about myself. I was a graduate from Rutgers University in New Brunswick in 2006. Then I got commissioned in August of 2007. I took commission with the United States Marine Corps. I did 2 deployments to Afghanistan, one in 2009 and one in 2011. The first one was a weapons platoon commander, and the second was as an executive officer. Then I returned home in September of 2011 for my second deployment, and I transitioned out of the Marine Corps February 1 of 2012. So, Margaret, did you want to ask the crowd about the first number, the first polling question?
Yes, we wanted you folks to tell us about your own military service using the questions box to indicate if you are active duty, reserve, guard, veteran, and in doing so, if you could also indicate which branch of service. If we happen to have folks who are civilians, if you could share that you're related to someone who's serving now or who has served in the past, that will be valuable to us as well. So while I've been talking, we've received some feedback already. And Chris, as you might expect, because Marines stick together, we have primarily Marines with us, but we do have an indication that we have folks who have parents or other relatives who are serving or who have served as well. So thanks everyone for sharing.
So what I wanted to do today was, dive into after my military service. So I just wanted to give a quick little background of who I served with and where I deployed. When I got out in February of 2012, my initial job search had begun. Actually, it had begun not too long after I'd come home in September. But I was trying to find jobs back in New Jersey when I was stationed in California. So it wasn't really hitting full steam until I traveled back cross country, came back home, and started searching for jobs in the New York, New Jersey market. What I initially started doing to try and find a job was that I used large military headhunters and job search firms like Monster and things like that. As far as the military headhunters, I used companies like Orion, Lucas Group, and other large organizations like that. How that process worked for me was that it was very militaristic. They would bring you to a large hotel room with large Fortune 1000 companies, and they would kind of parade you around from room to room to see who you wanted to interview with. The interview was very militaristic. They would sit you down in a chair. For instance, say if a large company like Coca-Cola was there, there would be 2 executives or 2 HR personnel in those seats. They'd ask you regimented questions, and I remember looking back on it and thinking that this isn't too far off from the military, but I look back at it and said that there's no way this is the way the civilian job market works. But I can see why the large military hunters did it the way they did, but in my opinion, it didn't help me with my transition. It didn't help me say, okay, this is how we did things in the military, and this is how the job placement works in the civilian world. What I initially did there was I took a job just to keep cash flow coming in. My last paycheck from the military was February 1, and I didn't want to have to be there a lag in pay. So I went on these large job searches and I got a couple offers. And without doing too much research into the job market, to the actual industry I was going into, I just took it. I took the job because it was generally a position that paid me similar to what I was earning in the military. So I didn't have to take a step back in my earnings. One of the things that I wish I had done differently was I avoided jobs out of my comfort zone. So as an officer in the Marine Corps, in the infantry, I did a lot of tasks of moving personnel around, moving equipment around, planning operations. So I thought to myself, well, logistics or operations is going to be good for me in the civilian world. What I never really did was I never analyzed what my real skill sets were before the military. I'm not trying to underplay at all the different the skills that I learned at my time in the Marine Corps, which were invaluable, but there were certain skill sets that I developed as a teenager in high school and college that helped me in the Marine Corps as well. And what I wish I would have done, I wish I would have combined my skill sets that I learned throughout my development throughout high school and college, and combined them with the skill sets that I learned throughout the Marine Corps. So if I would have done that, I would have realized that I enjoyed sales, that I enjoyed presentations, that I enjoyed meeting new people and networking. Instead, I took a job at a hospital, and I got stuck being in charge of large amounts of people that really did not take a lot of pride in their day-to-day job, which is the exact opposite that happened in the Marine Corps. So obviously, I made mistakes as I transitioned out in February 2012. And I really beat myself up about those mistakes. But what I've come to learn is that those mistakes are okay. So I quickly told you about a mistake that I made initially, was that I didn't analyze who Chris Wilson was and what he was good at and what his goals were in the future. I just said, okay, logistics and operation in the Marine Corps, I need to do logistics and operation in the civilian world. But in a day, I knew after 30 days of that new job that I had made a mistake. So then I spent the next probably 90 days keeping that job, but searching for something new. And I really didn't know what I was searching for, but I knew that managing large amounts of civilian populations in a hospital setting, in a big bureaucracy type setting, that wasn't going to fit my skill sets or fit what I wanted to do. And as I said in the first bullet point here, my first job wasn't what I needed in life. I needed a new challenge. Now, my second job was a large company, but it was in sales. So I was still working in a very large bureaucratic system, but I was independent as a sales rep. And then what I quickly learned was that I loved going on sales calls. I loved the challenge. I loved the independent lifestyle. And I really did just love meeting new people and trying to persuade them to buy a product that I had. And I'm not saying that sales is for everybody, but in that second job, I found out what I really love to do. The other thing that I made a mistake in is that how the business world changes consistently. And at first I thought, okay, in the Marine Corps, people, or in the military in general, people might get out after a couple years, or people may stay in there for 20 to 30 years or so, and that the military doesn't really change. But I was wrong in thinking that. In the military, you're going to be changing jobs every couple years, whether you're a team leader your first deployment, then you're going to be a SWAT leader the next. So that responsibility is different. The civilian world and the business world is pretty much the same as well, and how things are constantly changing, and that if you're not changing with that, you're going to develop to be stagnant in a job. You're going to be pigeonholed, if you will, into a certain position. You know, if you stay in a marketing role for your entire career, the people look at that as, okay, well, what skill sets does that individual have? I was told at a very early stage in my transition was that you need to look to move positions every 3 to 5 years. And when I really thought about that, that's not far off from, like I said, in the military, where my first deployment, I was a weapons platoon commander. I did that for about 2 years, and then I got moved to an executive officer position. So at first, I made the mistake of thinking that, no, you stay in a corporate position for 20 years and you never change, and you go from a sales rep to a sales manager to, you know, say a VP of sales, or whatever the case may be. But like I said, that great piece of advice that was given to me by a close mentor was that you need to look to adapt to new positions consistently. And I think said this in the way beginning of this slide, was that I put way too much pressure on myself for the transition. That transition is difficult, and it doesn't happen in a couple months. It doesn't happen even in a couple years. It's a consistent thing that you have to analyze and say, okay, what are the skill sets that I'm going to take from my time in the military, and how can I make myself better in the civilian world? So I kind of hit on this a little bit, but I did receive some great piece of advice as I transitioned out of the military. And I would say some of the best piece of advice that I received was when I first got out. It was in February 2012. I had the opportunity to speak to a family friend of mine who was the VP of Sales and Marketing for the Baltimore Ravens in the NFL. And the gentleman didn't know too much about the military, but what he said to me, he said, Chris, you had these awesome skill sets that you learned in the military, but probably one thing the military doesn't teach you is the aspect of networking. And all he said was grow your network, grow your network, grow your network. And I didn't really totally comprehend that until I was probably about 6 to 9 months into my sales job, where I was constantly meeting new people. And not to say that you have to just be in sales to network with people. You can be in operations, you can be in IT, you can be in a variety of other jobs. But the point of his advice was that you constantly have to meet different people, because the business world's landscape is always changing. Small businesses are being bought, large corporations are emerging. There's always those things, and you want to be able to have a network that you can always rely on to help you navigate the complex business world. Don't ever downplay your military experience. I did this in the beginning, and I hear it consistently from guys that I serve with. Is, everybody, whether you deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, on a ship, or you were in charge of different types of aircraft, whatever the case may be, that amount of experience you were given at that age is far more than any other civilian counterpart can say they had in the business world and so forth. A good example is that I hear a lot of guys who drove trucks or did different types of logistics for aircraft, and they said, oh, all I did was load the aircraft and get the aircraft ready for a mission. And then I would say to them, well, listen, if you didn't do that job correctly, there wouldn't be supplies that were being pushed to guys on the ground. There was really a lot of life and death situations that had second, third order effects if you didn't do your job. And then take yourself as an intelligence person. If you were doing intel in the military and you didn't research that mission as well as you could have, or you didn't look into an enemy situation as much as you could have, there were lives at stake. So every military experience came with this great amount of responsibility that I think no matter what job you had in the military, that you can be extremely proud of, and that you can make those correlations to the civilian world. The other thing that I learned was that there's people out there that are at I would say the twilight of their career, whether that's late 60s, 70s, or so forth, and they really do want to give back. They want to give back to our generation of veterans. And these individuals that I've met over my 3 years of being out of the Marine Corps, they haven't all been veterans. Some have, some haven't. But the large majority of people, the twilight of their career, I would meet them at an event, or I'd meet them through a family friend, and I would say, could I just, meet you over a cup of coffee and just pick your brain about business? And really 9 times out of 10, most of those individuals would say, yeah, I would love to share you with my experience. People in that stage of their career love to talk about the lessons they have learned and kind of bestow all of this knowledge that they've had over, say, 40 years of work experience. The other piece is that use government services to your advantage. How I did this was that I used the GI Bill to get my graduate degree in business at Rutgers. There's a ton of different opportunities out there. Government services sometimes get a bad rap for being very bureaucratic, and there are those as well. But in the end of the day, that there's some really great services. The GI Bill is just one, and that's one service that I'm extremely fortunate that I use. I would say getting my graduate degree of an MBA at Rutgers was probably the second best decision I ever made in my life, next to joining the Marine Corps. The other piece is study nuances of civilian culture. So I'll never forget when I first started out in sales that when people wouldn't tell the full truth on a sales call, this is a potential client of mine or a vendor of mine, I would call them out right in front of their face, call them liars, because trust and integrity is huge in the military, obviously. It's not that I shouldn't have called those people out for not being honest with me, but there was a way I could have done it differently. It wasn't like I was talking to a junior enlisted Marine and say, hey, Marine, you didn't tell me the truth on this, fess up to this. I was way too direct with civilians initially, and that's something that I consistently have to learn. And just balancing that civilian culture and learning it and not getting frustrated with it. And then the final piece here is get help when needed. We all, those who served in combat deployments, there's a chance that you might come home with post-traumatic stress. I did after about 2 years of coming back from Afghanistan. My symptoms started setting in, and probably one of the best decisions I ever made was going to seek help at the Headstrong Project. Margaret, did you want to talk about the poll number 2?
Yes, this might be a little more typing for you guys, but we wanted to know what was the best advice that you've ever received. You can use the questions box, and we were hoping that you would tell us a little bit about how civilians and employers might help military and veterans make successful transitions, and Chris alluded to that in one of his points. So the quick typists, Chris, have written networking, 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 and I think we might have a few more coming in. Let's see, accepting assistance. Yes, accepting assistance, especially from those who've been there, done that, and succeeded. So thanks everyone for participating in our poll.
Go to the next slide here. So I talked about mistakes being okay. I talked about great piece of advice that I gotten, but there were, and I don't know if things have come off as that I did make mistakes throughout my transition, and because I obviously was not perfect the time that I came out of the military to now by any stretch of the imagination. But I do want to hit on the positive points that I had. So, even though that I didn't end up staying with my sales role, what that position offered me, so experienced several industries with one role. I had a sales role for a large packaging company. So even though that I knew I didn't want to stay in packaging for my whole life, what that did was that allowed me to work with every industry really possible, because you have to think that every piece of material that we have in our lives, whether it's a computer, a phone, food and beverage, whatever the case may be, it's got to be packaged some way. So I got to deal with Fortune 500 companies, startup companies that had a product to move. And I'm not saying that packaging sales is the way for everybody to go into, but all I'm saying is that company allowed me to see different areas of the civilian world. So it didn't just hunker me down into one position and keep me isolated from different roles out there. So if you can find a role that can allow you to experience a variety of industries in one role, I highly recommend it. I would say getting connected with new age veteran service organizations. So in my opinion, the VFW, Marine Corps Leagues, American Legion, those all were great resources for veterans of older generations. But I would say that with the post 9/11 generation, that there's some really great veteran service organizations that can help you in a variety of ways, whether that's job placement, being a part of a community, transitioning with resumes and other soft networking skills. I have some of the organizations at the end, and I'll talk a little bit more about them then. Keeping positive relationships at every company or role. So I'm on my third, I'm with my third company right now, with third organization since in 3 years. And the previous two, I made sure, listen, it wasn't the job that I wanted, but in a day, I never left with a bad relationship. I always thank my boss for what I've learned from them, because in the end of the day, I really believe that you can pull positives from everything. So my first job, I only had for 4 months and realized that this isn't where I want to work every day. My second job, I was there for about 2+ years. Each time I just went to my supervisor, I thanked them for the lessons learned that they provided to me. And I would say that paid off because I never burned any bridges. The other thing that helped me too was always speaking about my experiences. It helped me get more comfortable with my transition into the civilian world. and trying to make correlations. Well, I did this in the military, or I did this in the Marine Corps, and this is how I see it helping me in this role. And the more you speak about what you did in your service and trying to make correlations to your current job, I think that just helps your transition tremendously. One of the last pieces is challenge myself in my weakness. My weakness is school. I was never a great student. I had to study a lot to earn halfway decent grades. But I gave a mentor of mine said to me, you know what? Look into an MBA. Look into a graduate program for business, because there's someone out there that's going to any tangible skills that you had as a veteran, and they're gonna take a chance on you, even if your undergrad grades were not up to par as where they need to be. And I did that. Weakness is school, but I would say fuck your weakness. And before, probably the second in my life so far in core was getting my MBA. And the final piece is getting therapy. So I can't even imagine where my life would be getting help that I was going for firstly. So these are the key organizations that I wanted to mention a little bit, go a little more depth about them. I highly recommend that you look into these, because they each offer a different positive point in transition. Team Red White is about working, resume building, and other things like that. Higher Purpose helps you get linked to large Fortune 1000 companies. Team Rubicon helps you carry on a mission with natural disasters. Mission Continues can put you in other nonprofits for work. IAVA is a central to job search, to GI Bill. And then finally, the Headstrong Project, which I currently work as a director of strategic growth. But like I said, they helped me battle my post-traumatic stress, and I attended their program for about 6 months of therapy. So at this time, I'd like to open it up for some questions. I know I went through a lot of items, so I know there's probably some different points of questions in the different slides.
Great. Chris, while people are typing some things in, I just wanted to mention we had a little bit of trouble with your audio. If you wanted to repeat what you talked a little bit about the therapy that got a little broken up.
Yeah, no problem. So was it back at slide number 11, points, positive points of transition?
Yes.
Okay, so you know, like I said, the second to last point was challenge myself, my weakness, which was school, and the other positive point of transition for me was my therapy program through the Headstrong Project. So the Headstrong Project, I was able to get connected with them through some family and friends, and I went through 6 months of therapy there. And that therapy program really made me such a stronger person mentally, and allowed me to be completely symptom-free from my post-traumatic stress.
Fantastic.
And were you able to hear everything through the organizations I went through?
We missed 4 block because you were coming in and out a little bit. So if you wanted to talk about 4 block and the Mission Continues, those were 2 that the sound didn't come through so good with.
Okay, great. Yeah, so 4 block is an organization that helps you out with those soft skills that I mentioned in the beginning, which would be networking, other resume writing, or just really analyzing what your skill sets are. I did not know about 4 block when I transitioned out of the Marine Corps, and I think this is an organization that could have been a tremendous help to me. The Mission Continues allows you to get into volunteer roles or even fellowship programs for different nonprofits that you would have a passion for. So another great organization that works very closely with the Headstrong Project. And I will add that all of these organizations have a very close collaborative effort with one another, and their main goal is to help veterans transition, but some just have a different they have a different focus, essentially, where Headstrong is mental health, Team Red, White, and Blue is building a community. So Margaret, was there some questions that were coming up?
Yes, there were a couple that came in, so let me just kind of summarize them. We have one that asks, would you have gone to business school at a different time?
Yeah, so I've been asked that quite a few times in the past. Whether that was it is a great degree because I think it's a leadership degree in business, but I think it depends on what point of your life you're in. So for me, it was the right time. I was just newly married. I did not have children. I will say the MBA it's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination, but it is more difficult with a wife and children. So I'm glad that I went through it at the point that I did. But I will say this, we did have people in my program that juggled a wife and 4 children and their full-time jobs. So it is possible, but I do feel like that I went through in the right time.
Oh, perfect. And just, Chris, just to clarify, you did the executive MBA, which is a little bit of a more intensive and accelerated pace. So other folks who have some family challenges might be able to take a different type of MBA, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So there are part-time. The MBA runs in 3 parts. You need a full-time MBA student where you are no longer working and you're going to class just nights, and then there's the executive MBA. People with I actually every veteran I highly recommend the executive MBA because you go to school with people that are generally in their late 30s, early 40s, and more established individuals. I just feel like that veterans, because of their experience in the military, are more mature, and that the full-time MBA students don't have those life experiences that you may have had, and that you can relate a little bit better with someone in their late 30s, early 40s.
Okay, terrific. Another question was, would you have stayed in the military longer?
Yeah, so one thing a mistake that I look back on was that I would have given myself more transition time out. I got back in essentially October 1st, and I was out February 1st. So that gave me 4 months, yeah, about 4 months to transition out, and I definitely needed some more downtime. I turned down a position that would have given me an extension of February for another 6 months. It would have put me in the summertime frame, and that would have allowed me to really, I think, study the business landscape a little bit better. I look back on that, and I really came home and I rushed out.
Okay, good, thank you. And I think the last question here is, where do you believe you would be if you didn't pursue therapy?
Yeah, so without the Headstrong project, well, one, I definitely would not have an unbelievable role with them as their director of strategic growth, which I am truly thankful for every day. But on a personal note, I would say the relationship with my wife would not be good, and who knows if I would still have it. I would probably be abusing alcohol or drugs to deal with my symptoms, and generally I would be I wouldn't be a happy person. I'd be very depressed. So I have a great relationship with my wife. I don't abuse alcohol or drugs, and I am excited to wake up every single morning and enthusiastic to help veterans through the Headstrong Project. So, I owe them a lot, and my life would be a much different place right now.
That's fantastic, and it's wonderful that you're willing
So
to
is that all
share.
the questions, Margaret?
That's all of our questions for today, but I do want to let folks know that we have a wonderful person in Chris, and he's agreed to address questions later, and we've provided contact information if you wanted to speak with him directly. But with our question and answer time concluded, did you want to make some concluding remarks, Chris?
Yeah, so Margaret, really quickly, I do for everybody that's on this webinar and people that will watch this in the future, that I believe that if veterans can transition correctly, and I know every veteran has the ability to, It's that they have skills that they've learned in their time in the service that will change this nation. We can look back at every generation of warriors that have fought previously to the post 9/11 generation, and we can see how they have helped our country in a civilian way, through business, through nonprofits, through education, through law, through medicine, whatever the case may be. There's just so many great things veterans bring to the table. I'm always willing to connect people to my network. So I am honest with this. I don't want anybody to be strangers here. And on this last slide, here is my here is my contact information. That is my cell phone down there. Anybody can feel free to contact me anytime, text, or write me an email, and just in the subject line put webinar Rutgers, and just ask me whatever you need. And like I said, I'm willing to help out anybody that I can in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I know that's very sincere because you've made that same offer to us here at Rutgers and have always come through. So thank you for doing that, for your service, and for your time today. And we will have this contact information available for everyone in the archived version, or you can reach out to our team to get it. But we have some additional information that we want to share with you on our next slide. And it's a big thank you to the attendees who participated today. So thank you for joining us and participating in the discussion. And just a friendly reminder to those who are interested in the Mini-MBA in Business Management for Military and Veterans, that week-long program starts very soon. We will quickly review your application and notify you of your admission status, but you have to apply as soon as possible. For more information, you can see our website, but if you only have the audio, that is business.rutgers.edu/EE, business.rutgers.edu/EE. And Rutgers Business School Executive Education has a lot of great things planned for you, this program and many others. A full schedule of all of our programs can be found on the website mentioned above. And we encourage you to check back with us often because we have new and exciting programs in the works and set to launch in a few months. So thank you again, everyone. We'll be in touch soon with details regarding our webinar schedule for the coming months. And I'm going to leave the question box open for about another minute, and I ask that you would share your preference for a future topic by typing it into the questions box. So just use that one last time before you sign off from us. And as I mentioned a couple times earlier, I think, a link to the archived recording of this presentation will be sent to you very soon. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and bye for now.